Well, here we are. It's October 11th, 2018. And I'm enjoying some rock and roll music from the 50s back there, which brings back to mind many years ago as a teenager visiting Bruce Jensen's Tropical Petland in Metuchen, New Jersey. And as we introduced in video recently, a month or so ago, we've reconnected after 60 years and are sharing our tropical fish hobbies together. And so with some little bit of music in the background, I'll give you an update on what's going on here. But I got to tell you, I just got off the phone with Bruce. A short phone call became an hour and 20 minutes. No, more like an hour and 40 minutes. Just talking fish, talking plants, talking our years together, what memories we had. This is what Ray and I used to do, and it brought to mind the fact that, you know, a hobby is fun, but it's more fun when you have somebody to share it with. I'm blessed with having a wife who shares this hobby, and so I've got somebody here all the time that is as passionate about this care for the fish, the plants, the decorating as I am. And reconnecting with Bruce just brought that back at another level. He's never going to replace Ray. We're not going to try to, but it's just so rewarding to have two people talking about something they're both passionate about, comparing notes of when he was down here, talking about plants that he saw in the videos, for example, and what's going on with them today, using a fertilization program that, in fact, he shared with me, and now I'm not following. I am following, rather. And so that's the process that I'll re-describe here because so many people in the comments ask about it. Very simply putting CO2, liquid CO2 in the tanks every day as part of the morning routine. And then once a week, as I do about a 30% water change, adding leaf zone as a fertilizer. And then on a quarterly basis, every 3 months, putting plant tabs to help the plants grow. And so I've got some plants here that I'm going to share with Bruce, and I'll show you in the bow tank behind me. He gave me a bulb, a small bulb. He's here. This is one of the gifts I have for you, along with the piece of that red kabamba that we often feature in these videos. And I have no idea where that bulb went. I put it in the bow tank and lost it. Just before shooting this video, I was over there looking at that tank, and I found some leaves from a plant that I have not had in that tank, and that's his bulb. And it's one of those dwarf lilies or whatever it is. You'll see it when we get over there, but kind of cool. He shared something, and back when I was visiting his tanks, he was talking about how the plants grow so much he has to trim them back every week. And I thought, what a great thing to have happen. And lo and behold, I'm now at a point where I'm trimming these plants back because that fertilization program is working. And so it was sort of funny last week. Pam and I were sitting here, and as days would go by, we couldn't believe how fast the kabamba was growing in this corner tank that you're about to see. And lo and behold, I mean, look, it literally looked like it was growing an inch to 2 inches a day. And it was growing nicely, but about the third or fourth day, I happened to notice that, in fact, it had been uprooted. And it was just rising in the water by an inch or two each day. So it wasn't growing that fast. It was releasing from the roots that fast. So let's take a look at the plants and fish and see what's going on here, okay? Again, Jim's inviting you into our fish room, and love sharing with you. Hopefully you have some friends that, not just through video, I mean, this is kind of cool, and I do appreciate your comments and hope you subscribe, but when it comes right down to it, the face-to-face, having the individual at the other end having a conversation that we said goodbye about an hour and 15 minutes into the call, and the call ended up 15 minutes longer than even that. That's how engaged we were in the conversations. Now, he's been off for a couple weeks, so that's part of it, but just comparing notes and various stores we talked about where we visited, and we could relate to that. Remember that tank you saw at the Hidden Reef? Remember the one at the Aquarium Center? And we talked about that. Really cool. Hey, come see what's going on here, okay? All right, we'll start off with a tour of the corner tank. Again, the pie-shaped 58-gallon, 60-gallon, whatever it is. And the fish are doing very well. I kind of confess that the number of neons has dwindled to about 11 now from the original 20. But there's never a dead fish floating in here, so somehow they get taken care of. Those black barbs that we talked about before are still doing beautifully, and they are one very handsome fish, very active fish, and capture your attention whenever you're looking at this tank. See if we can catch them over here in the corner, and just love the color of their fins as you can see them here. The plants, as you recall, we had a large forest of kabamba over here on the right hand side, and it had really grown very nicely to the point where I actually had to trim it back and move some pieces of that plant to the other side that we'll see in just a second. But it hasn't done so well once I've trimmed it. And so as maybe you can see as I zoom in a little bit how thin the stalks have become on this kabamba on the right, as opposed to how thick the growth was before. It's still pretty thick down toward the bottom, okay? But when you come right down to it, it hasn't fully recovered from that trimming. And so, not sure what that's about. So we still have a good growth here, but it's not what it was. But then again, this is only half of what was there, and you'll see some roots developing on some of the stems. More interestingly, right below that, we have this, what I've been told is a spiral Amazon. And I like the plant, but it hasn't grown as we hope, mainly because it doesn't have a root system. The root system has disappeared, and every time I've planted it in my gravel here, it ends up floating to the top. And so after trying it in 2 different tanks and so forth, I finally found a plant anchor in one of the tanks, and I wrapped it around the base so that the gravel will hold it down now. We're going to see how that works out over time. The other plant that I'm very interested in is the ones right here. You see the two, having trouble with this tripod, shaking it. But those 2 plants right in the center, they're doing very well with the fertilization program, and I've opened them up a little bit so they can be seen. And then lo and behold, you have the other plants that we've been talking about in the past videos. In the front there we have that red plant that is doing so well now that I've uncovered it and made it more visible. And then behind that we have a large Amazon that seems to do so well. And so this is the red plant I'm talking about, and it's got, let's see, 3, 5, about 15 leaves on it now, so not bad at all. And then that Amazon is the big one back here. The leaves are doing well, and we've got about 15 leaves there also. And so as we come across, the banana plants are planted as opposed to having the bananas above the gravel. And so they are bright green, which looks great against the darkness of that other plant. And it's doing well. And then we have a small Amazon sword that was buried back here, and I moved it out a little bit, so the leaves are starting to develop. And then the Apotheca plants here and here, baby one here, and that one just very slow growing but doing beautifully. And then over here we have the corkscrew vallisneria that I love, and it's really doing well, sending out shoots and baby plants. So we've got a little forest of that there. And then in the back, remember that tall plant we put in there? I don't know how well you can see it here. Let me get behind them and see. But it is really grown out nicely to the point where I've got to do something with it because it's blocking some of the light, and I think that's affecting some of the other plants. And maybe that's why the kabamba over on the left hand side here which came from the right-hand side plants, is not taking off and getting as thick as I'd hoped. It's kind of sparsely leafed on the shoots, but it's still doing well. It's just not as thick as I would have liked to have it. The other thing that we've been watching closely, and I don't know if you're going to see any of it here, but that red kabamba, it's still there right down at the base of that spiral Amazon. And I wish it would develop some roots or something and really take off like the kabamba above it. But so far it hasn't. But like I say, it's still there with some hope, and that was a gift from Bruce that he brought down from one of his thriving plants. So anyway, that's sort of what's going on here in this tank. And the fish are doing well. I noticed some babies there the other day. Some of them are able to thrive in the heavily planted undergrowth. But I did notice the other day one of the smaller babies came out of the plant growth, and one of those barbs immediately ate it. So I'm not going to have too much of that going on here. And that's a quick update on the plant growth here. And that's been so engaging to watch. As I showed you before, that lounge chair that I sit in when we watch TV, and the TV is off to the right here. This is in the foreground when you're watching TV. And so your eyes naturally tend to go to it, especially during commercials, and to enjoy the fish that are doing so well. So we've got 2 LED lights in here. And something I found out recently, I did buy a new LED light with 72 LEDs in it to replace the one that came with the tank, which was a white LED with 1 strip of lights. And as my wife suggested, it looks like it could take another strip. And I went out and looked on Amazon, and sure enough, I could, for a very reasonable price, get another strip, and it plugged in very nicely. It wasn't a big deal at all. It literally connected a pair of wires and put it into a holder on the other end. And so we've got actually 2 sets of LED lights here, and so I've been getting a little bit of algae on the front glass for a change, and I haven't had that forever here, so maybe I need to cut back a little bit on the lighting, but again, I think the other plants need that lighting, so don't know what we're going to do there. Hey, come on, let's take a quick look over at the bow tank. Okay, this is the bow tank again, and remember that space in the front I said I freed up when I replanted this tank? You'll notice now there's not much space there because the plants are growing so thick that they're coming out from where they were before, out toward the front of the tank. And the plants seem to be doing well, especially the Wigia here. I love the colorful Wigia off to the left here, just before the... There you go. Just in front of the aeration. And then that plant off to the left that we've been watching, it changed its leaf growth totally now. So it's all spiky leaves as opposed to those spoon-shaped leaves that it had originally. Well, you see the 2 different types of Ludwigia there. The one is the bright green, and to the right is that reddish leaf. And then there's another piece of that light green one right here that I rooted by putting down into the gravel. And that other one that was originally so overgrown with algae that it was killing it is still doing well. It's nice and green, and it's thriving. If I had more space, I'd bring it out a little bit further. But right now, I'm not complaining about this, by the way. I'm so crowded with plants that I love it. I really do. But it's a challenge because there's a lot of Amazon sword plants in this particular tank. And right there in the center, let's see if I can focus in on it. I got to see where that is. Where the heck is it? I think I'm looking at it right here. Kind of hard to see in the viewfinder, but that light-leafed lily-type leaf was not there before. So that's the bulb that Bruce gave me that I dropped in here. Had no idea where it went, and now I've got a plant coming out of it. And so that's what I'm waiting for. Very thrilled with that. And then off to the right here, We have that plant, which is now two plants. There's a smaller plant to the right, or in front of the bigger one. Not sure if you can make out that there's two plants. There's a smaller one in front of the bigger one, and that's doing well. And to be honest with you, I don't know what to do about this other plant. This other plant is doing well, and it's developing its root system on the long stems. So there you have not only the leaves that are still doing well, and I haven't settled this down any place right now, so it's just hanging in there, but it's rooted way in the back, and the long stem comes out to these leaves. Now right in front of that you also have my other challenge, and that is right centered on this view. To the right there's a pretty much stripped stem. It's got a couple leaves at the top just behind those angelfish, and that's water wisteria, and that particular water wisteria is hanging in there, but it's being eaten. And just to its left there's another wisteria plant which I bought and is doing well, and it's not being eaten like the one on the right, which has been there a while. So not sure what the difference is. It's a beautiful plant, and I'm hoping it hangs in there. And then the other thing you'll notice is right in the center here we have one of the sprigs of that tall plant that you saw over in the corner tank. And I took one sprig out because there was about 4 stems, but they branched out. Like this is branched out into about 3 or 4 additional stems. So it's doing well here. And it's one way I relieved some of the light blocking leaves from the one over in the corner tank. And the Ludwigia right in the center there, next to the air stone, is not rooted. You may be able to see it's got an anchor at the bottom of it, and so it's sort of held in place near that fixture, but it's growing nicely, and this is the first time I've had it where it hasn't fallen apart on me, and so we'll see where that goes. I just don't have a place where I could root it right now. Everything is covered. It's a beautiful problem to have as far as I'm concerned. The other thing I've noticed, and I don't know if this is a factor of that CO2 treatment that I say I do every day. I'm following the directions on the container, but when you come right down to it, I wonder if the fish are getting a little bit, what's the right word? Not as active as they normally would be here because of the CO2. I remember watching a video out here on YouTube where somebody was saying how complex it was to balance the balance the CO2, not the YouTube, the CO2, over time to get it just right, and it would take upwards of a year sometimes. And so I backed away from it at that time because I wasn't going to get one of those CO2 diffusers in here. And instead, when Bruce introduced me to the liquid CO2, that seemed to be pretty easy. So every morning, and I come on, turn the lights on, or come on automatically, but when I come out, I give each tank the CO2 treatment so that the plants can do their CO2 conversion to oxygen during the day when the lights are on. Now this particular tank, right now it's just the fluorescent light back there, and let me go turn on the LED lights in front so you can see what it looks like normally. So now we have the LED light that we added to this tank sitting in the front, and you get a better picture. Of course the camera does some light adjustment too, so I'm not sure how much it adjusts back and forth, but you can see a lot more of the Amazon sword plants in the front, and also that sprig of Ludwigia that I said just to the left of center is doing so well. But then maybe you can see the roots on that stem plant toward the top and to the right. Fish-wise, I've added a couple more angelfish here, some small ones. Got a good buy on 3 of those for $9.99 over at the fish factory over outside of Bristol. And so everybody seems to be doing well here. We did lose that one big angel that had an eye problem. And the other angels are doing fine. as are the pearl gouramis. Not pearl gouramis, yeah, pearl gouramis, right? And so we've got the big catfish in here. You see the red-tailed shark that I love so much right down the center in the front, going back. The angelfish tend to be different varieties of them. And there's that big one that has been around so long with the orange above its head. And so I'm still using aeration, and as I shared last time, Bruce suggested not using aeration because you're losing the CO2 as that aerates. Well, I'm wasting some CO2, but I like it better this way for some reason or other. Anyway, we had a great conversation today, really going back into the history and sharing some memories while at the same time being in the ever-present, talking about what we found recently at the stores here and things of that nature. So I hope that you have a friend that you can bring into your home and show your fish tanks to, and that you go to that person's fish room and see what they're doing and can compare notes and just share the enjoyment that goes between two hobbyists. And I know I certainly have appreciated that. Like I say, Ray and I were good friends for, he was 75 at his passing last December. So we were together as friends from childhood for about 65 years. And that's a very special lifetime friend. So anyway, there we go. And got some nice 50s music in the background here. I hope you can hear it. Wah, wah, wah. Come go with me. All right, come go with me as we go into the office for a very brief visit for the office tank. Okay, here in the office tank, I think we had the new lighting on here last visit, maybe not, but I've added LED lighting to this tank because the tank has a tall hexagonal 30-gallon tank, and trying to get the plants to grow here was kind of tough given the depth of that tank. And so this has helped a little bit. This tank has not been fixed up recently, so you're not going to see a real pretty tank here as much as just some stories about what's going on. And so we have some kabamba here, for example, and that's cutaways from the kabamba you saw in the corner tank. And it happened to be facing away from the light right now. And then right behind that, I don't know if you can see it very well or not, we have that tall plant. I don't know what to call it. It's like a reddish leaf, and the leaves are sort of focused backwards here. But that's one of those stems that I moved back here, and it's thriving and building out some branches, but I need to do some work here to make that plant more visible and attractive. The Amazon sword in the center continues to do very well with large leaves and quite a few leaves. But most down here I've got also a water wisteria, which is not growing out, but it's certainly thriving okay. Nobody's eating the leaves on it. And it's got about 4 stems that are planted separately as opposed to a bundle. And we'll see how that's going to work out over time. And then we have a couple of those pompagone plants right down there, the dark green leaves and some of the lighter leaves right in front. Okay, so this particular tank is mostly live bearers. We have some guppies, of course. Everybody's got to have some guppies. And we've got those platies and also some lyre-tail mollies that always look like they're pregnant. I don't know if they're misshapen or whether they're actually pregnant, as you can see right there in the dead center. And there's 2 females there that are just huge. And yet I don't see many baby in this particular tank. There is a bed in there, which certainly would keep down the babies, wouldn't it? And I think it's still there. Sometimes the fish just disappear, but I think he's back there someplace. So again, not much to show here. Just wanted to show you the effect of the new lighting, and got to do some work here. So maybe this weekend I'll do some replanting, move things around, and make them look a little bit better. So again, thank you for joining me for today's update. The first end of the second week of October, October 11th. Till next time, share your hobby. Hope you have a hobby friend like I do. I'm truly blessed.
I told her when it comes to talking, I'm the sweetest sweet talker in the world. Well, she said, you better start talking if you want me to be your girl. And she said,